Well, my dear students, today let us learn about the role of nitrogen and the cycling of nitrogen in the nature under the topic mineral nutrition. So, under the mineral nutrition, we will be learning about the nitrogen. So, nitrogen, as you know, is a macronutrient. Nitrogen is a macronutrient. So what do you mean by macronutrient? So a macronutrient is an element, nutrient, which is required in a large quantity to the plants. And nitrogen as such in the nature or in the atmosphere, 80% you have a nitrogen. Atmosphere has a 80% nitrogen. Even then, plants have this nutrient shortage. So it is a limiting nutrients because no plant or animal can take a nitrogen directly from the atmosphere. So nitrogen is to be taken only from the soil. And why nitrogen is required for the plants and animals? Because nitrogen is part of amino acids, proteins, hormones, and DNA, etc. So they play major role and they are the major constituents of amino acids, proteins, DNA, hormones, vitamins, etc. Therefore, nitrogen is a very essential nutrient. So, how nitrogen gets fixed in the soil? That is what we are going to discuss today. So, nitrogen is fixed, that is fixation of nitrogen. So, fixation of nitrogen takes place in the three steps or three ways. One is the atmospheric fixation, then industrial fixation, and biological fixation. So, nitrogen is fixed. So, nitrogen is fixed in the form of ammonia or nitrate and nitrate. So, fixation of nitrogen, the atmospheric nitrogen is converted into nitrites or nitrates and ammonia and fixed in the soil, and it is done in three ways: atmospheric fixation, industrial fixation, biological fixation. So let us see what is atmospheric fixation. So atmospheric fixation is by the precipitation. So when there is precipitation or rain, the lightning and ultraviolet radiations will give the energy required for the combination of nitrogen and oxygen. So it is fixed as nitrogen dioxide, okay, or nitrous oxide. So it is during rain this atmospheric fixation takes place. Then industrial fixation. So industries produce the nitrogen rich fertilizers. So they make use of nitrogen to make urea and all. They will collect nitrogen from the atmosphere, and industries will make the fertilizers NPK. In that, then even forest fire. So during forest fires, the nitrogen get fixed in the soil. That is industrial fixation. Then comes biological fixation. So biological fixation of nitrogen is actually fixed by microbes. So several microbes are involved in fixation of this nitrogen in the soil. So plants get nitrogen through biological nitrogen fixation. So now let us discuss about biological nitrogen fixation. So biological nitrogen fixation, the major role is played by the microorganisms. The first step of nitrogen fixation as such is a fixation. So from the atmosphere, nitrogen is absorbed and it is converted into ammonia, and conversion of ammonia is called as ammonification. So conversion of nitrogen into ammonia is called as ammonification. Then ammonia is converted into nitrite and nitrates, that is called as nitrification. And further, this nitrogen and oxygen are split and nitrogen is supplied back to the atmosphere. That process is called as denitrification. Once denitrification takes place, nitrogen goes back to the atmosphere. So this cycle continues. So first nitrogen is fixed. Fixing of nitrogen to the soil is called as nitrogen fixation. Then the molecular nitrogen. The molecular nitrogen is so nitrogen is having triple bond. Okay, the molecular nitrogen has two atoms of nitrogen with a triple bond. So it has to be converted into ammonia. That is called as ammonification. So first let us see how the fixation of nitrogen takes place. So fixation. Various microorganisms are involved in the fixation of nitrogen. One is rhizobium. So you have heard about the microbacterium Rhizobium radicicola. Rhizobium radicicola is found in the leguminous plants. So where in the leguminous plants they are found? So in the knot-like structures in the root called as nodules. So nodules of leguminous plants. So there is a mutualism or symbiosis in case of rhizobium and leguminous plant. So leguminous plants have in their roots the roots. The roots have knot-like a structure. So this is the knot-like structure. These knot-like structures are called as root nodules. Root nodules are formed by the infection of rhizobium. So rhizobium will be there in the soil. Then slowly it will form a infected thread. Then enters into the roots of leguminous plants. Then they will form the nodules. So this is the nodule. And why rhizobium can fix nitrogen is they produce a enzyme called as a nitrogenase. Okay, they produce an enzyme called nitrogenase. This nitrogenase enzyme will break down each bond of the nitrogen. So you can see this. So here, if this is the nitrogenase enzyme, so this is the nitrogenase enzyme. The nitrogenase enzyme, nitrogen molecule. So this is the nitrogen molecule with the triple bond. One by one bond is broken and it will form so first bond is broken, two bonds are retained. To the first bond, a hydrogen is fixed. In the next step, next bond is broken. And two hydrogen atoms are fixed. In the last step, it will result in formation of two molecules of ammonia. So NH3. So you can see this is nitrogenase enzyme. So nitrogenase enzyme is the enzyme produced by rhizobium in the root nodules. This one by one bond is broken and hydrogen gets fixed. First two hydrogen molecules, first one each, then two, then three, and ultimately it will become ammonia. So this way of fixation is called as ammonification. And nitrogenase is an enzyme that functions only in the absence of oxygen. So oxygen is not required, or presence of oxygen can dysfunction the nitrogenase enzyme. So how a oxygen free atmosphere is created in the root nodule? So rhizobium when reaches there, oxygen should not be there. So how a oxygen free atmosphere is created? So it is created with the help of a pigment called as lead hemoglobin. Lead hemoglobin is the pigment that will remove oxygen from the root nodules. Therefore, lead hemoglobin is called as oxygen scavenger. It is called as oxygen scavenger. So lead hemoglobin is oxygen scavenger. So you know what is the function of a scavenger. So it cleans up the oxygen from the root nodules. This will facilitate the nitrogenase to convert the molecular nitrogen into ammonia. So this process of nitrogen fixation is done by rhizobium in the root nodules. Then this is only a symbiotic relationship between leguminous plants like mimosa and other pulses. So rhizobium is a symbiotic bacterium. Then free living bacteria are also there. So free living bacteria like the Azotobacter bacterium, Azotobacter, then Azospirillum, so these are nitrogen fixing bacteria. Beside this, we also have another one, Frankia. So Frankia is found in association with the roots of the gymnosperms like ulnus. So in ulnus we find Frankia, but they are non-leguminous plants. With the leguminous plants we have rhizobium, and Azotobacter and Azospirillum are free living bacteria in the soil. So all these bacterium help in fixing the nitrogen that is there in the atmosphere into the soil and convert that into ammonia, that is called as ammonification. So here we can write rhizobium, then Frankia, then Azospirillum, Azotobacter, or these are bacteria. Then further, ammonia is converted into nitrites and nitrates. So conversion of ammonia into nitrates and nitrates is called as a nitrification, and it is done by Nitrobacter bacteria. Nitrobacter bacteria and Nitrosomonas. So Nitrobacter bacteria and Nitrosomonas will convert ammonia. So two ammonia molecules into nitrite, then two hydrogen and two water molecules. Then this nitrite, so this is nitrite. This nitrite is further converted into nitrate. Is further converted into NO3 by combining with the oxygen. So NO2, 2 NO2 plus oxygen, you will get a 2 NO3. So this is a nitrate. Okay. So this is the role of Nitrobacter and Nitrosomonas. So Nitrobacter and Nitrosomonas bacteria will convert ammonia into nitrites and nitrates. That is called as a nitrification. So a large number of the bacteria, mainly Nitrobacter and Nitrosomonas, will help in converting. So nitrogen is absorbed actually in the form of nitrate and nitrates. Then comes denitrification. So denitrification is breaking down once again nitrogen and oxygen from the nitrates and nitrates, and that is how nitrogen is given back to the atmosphere, and it is done by the bacteria like the Pseudomonas and Thiobacillus. So Pseudomonas and Thiobacillus will convert nitrogen into nitrogen and oxygen, and nitrogen is given back to the atmosphere. So that is the cycling of nitrogen. So since the microorganisms like Rhizobium, Frankia, Azospirillum, Nitrobacter, Nitrosomonas, Pseudomonas, Thiobacillus, all these things are involved, it is called as a biological nitrogen fixation. So this is how nitrogen gets fixed in the plants from the soil. So this is biological nitrogen fixation. So what did we study today? Let us learn once again. So nitrogen is a very important macronutrient. Though in the atmosphere we have 80% nitrogen, directly no organism can make use of nitrogen. It should be either converted into ammonia or nitrate or nitrite, then only it can be used. Then the role of nitrogen, what is the role of nitrogen in our body or in the plants? So nitrogen is the major constituent of amino acids, proteins, hormones and DNA. Then how nitrogen from the atmosphere is fixed into the soil? There are three ways. One is atmospheric fixation, where the nitrogen in the atmosphere gets fixed into the soil by the action of energy provided by the lightning and radiations during precipitation. So during precipitation, the nitrogen gets dissolved in water and it will form nitrous oxide. Industrial fixation is industries will make the fertilizers, and these fertilizers for making urea like fertilizers NPK, their nitrogen is taken from atmosphere. That is how atmospheric nitrogen is fixed into soil. Then biological nitrogen fixation. Biological nitrogen fixation, major role is played by the microorganisms. Living things play a major role in fixation of nitrogen. That is why it is called as a biological nitrogen fixation. So how biological nitrogen fixation takes place? Biological nitrogen fixation takes place in 4 ways. One is fixation, 2 is ammonification, and 3 is nitrification, and last one is denitrification. Fixation is the fixing of nitrogen into the soil. It is done by a group of microorganisms. Some of them are symbiotic, some are free living, and some are associated with the non-leguminous plants. Even blue-green algae like nostoc, blue-green algae, then the Anabina, they also play a major role in the fixing of nitrogen. That is why they are also called as, blue-green algae is also called as biofertilizers. They are also called as biofertilizers because they fix the nitrogen into the soil. So conversion of nitrogen into ammonia is called as ammonification. How it is done? It is done with the help of a nitrogenase enzyme. So this nitrogenase enzyme is provided by rhizobium, and rhizobium is found in the root nodules of leguminous plants. And nitrogenase enzyme requires the oxygen-free anaerobic condition, and this condition is provided by leg hemoglobin. Interestingly, here leg means leguminous plant. Hemoglobin, it is called hemoglobin. You will wonder how in plants there is a hemoglobin. So human hemoglobin and plant hemoglobin has no connection. Then why it is called hemoglobin? It is called hemoglobin because just like human hemoglobin, that one also combines with the oxygen and it has a pink color. Since it has got pink color and combines with the oxygen, it is called as a hemoglobin. So either by structure, human hemoglobin. So don't get confused with the human hemoglobin and plant hemoglobin. This is a leg hemoglobin found only in the leguminous plants. Then it is nicknamed as oxygen scavenger. It is called oxygen scavenger because it removes oxygen from the root nodules for the functioning of nitrogenase. So you will appreciate the arrangements in the root nodule for the functioning of nitrogenase enzyme. But rhizobium can live both in a aerobic condition and anaerobic condition. But it can fix nitrogen only in an anaerobic condition because nitrogenase functions in the anaerobic condition. Then conversion of ammonia into nitrates and nitrates is called as a nitrification. It is done by bacterium called Nitrobacter. Then another is Nitrosomonas. So ammonia is converted into nitrite, NO2, then NO3 nitrate. Then if all the nitrogen like that from the atmosphere, if it is taken out and fixed in the soil, then in the atmosphere there will not be nitrogen at all. So nitrogen need to be given back to the nature, and it is done by a process called as denitrification. That is how 80% of nitrogen is retained in the atmosphere. So Pseudomonas and Thiobacillus are the bacteria which help in recycling of nitrogen and decomposition of the dead organisms and release of nitrogen. So this is how nitrogen cycles in the atmosphere. Okay.